Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's class, Pet Portrait Studies in Artist Loft Graphite. I'm your instructor, Adrienne Hodge, and uh, tonight's class will be a bit of a precursor to the classes that we have planned for, or that I have planned with Michaels for the next couple of weeks, where we'll be doing a pet portrait in Artist Loft Gouache. So this is a portrait of my lovely cat, Linda, who's roaming around behind me. And she might make a guest appearance here at some point. She loves to creep in the background during my Michael's classes. So, but I wanted these classes to be uh, helpful for you to be able to create your own pet portrait. So if you want to use your own reference images, I'm going to be talking about ways that you can take what we're doing tonight and apply it to your own reference photos. So if you're not into drawing and painting my cat, but you really want to do your own pet portraits, or if you would like to even, start making pet portraits as a business, I'm going to give you a lot of fun tips and tricks to help you uh, that will help you with composition and capturing texture of fur and all that fun stuff, and then capturing likeness of a pet. Because when people request a pet portrait, which I've done several pet portraits, and I do plenty of people portraits as well as art commissions, they want it to look like their particular pet, and our pets have particular likeness, so we want to try to capture those things so that they look like the pet themselves, because we care about our pets, and they are like our family. They are our family. So anyway, but if you want to just follow along and just learn to draw and paint my cat, tonight we'll be drawing my cat, and we'll be breaking the cat down into several little studies here in graphite, and talking about ways that we might create some different compositions for a pet portrait, and also ways to like edit the background and what makes an optimal photo for a pet portrait as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to my tabletop view and go over supplies. And yeah, there's Linda in the background right now. Her full name is Linda Herbert Bagel. All right. Let me switch to my tabletop view. Oops. Okay, so don't forget to tag your work with the hashtags Make It With Michaels or Michaels Classes, and you can follow me on Instagram at ADHodge. And here's some of my artwork on my business cards. I'm also on Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art, and I've got some independent classes coming up one online class coming up in January on online portrait drawing for beginners that you can sign up for if you go through my link tree. And I forgot to mention that for Ilse, but that's easy to find if you just search my name, Adrienne Hodge, and link tree. And if you're interested in signing up for that, and I'm also excited about my New Year's classes with Michael's. Got one called 25 Sketchbook Prompts to Start 2025. And we did 24 sketchbook prompts to start 2024 this past January. So I'm excited to do that again. Okay, so I'm using some Artist Loft pencils, some sketching pencils. I might have a few different Artist Loft sets of graphite pencils mixed in here. And then I've got an Artist Loft drawing pad. And then just an Artist Loft eraser. And that is it for tonight. It's a pretty simple supply list. Next week will be the class that we have more supplies for that gouache portrait. So we'll be using watercolor paper and Artist Loft gouache for next week. Okay, and then the last thing on the supply list should have been included on the supply list, but if you do not see it, I dropped it in the chat, and it is a Google Doc, so hopefully you can access that. Anyone with the link should be able to open that document, and I have several photos of Linda Bagel here. So I made a couple of them black and white because I want to focus in really on the value on those. I mean, we're going to be looking at the value on all of them, but I was really trying to limit distractions on a couple of them by making them black and white. Okay, so to get started here, one unofficial supply list item that I've been using a lot lately is a playing card, or if you have a post-it note or a business card or anything like that, you might want to use that to trace some boxes here. And if you don't have that handy, then you can just sketch some boxes, but we're going to be making some thumbnail sketches. So thumbnail sketches are small sketches that we make in our sketchbook to make plans. So you can do these before you do a larger painting to study the subject that you plan on painting. So tonight we're planning to paint a pet portrait over the next couple of weeks. So we want to make plans. And this is where I said this class can be helpful for you to apply to any photos, because if you're like me, you probably have hundreds or maybe even thousands of photos of your pet, and you're trying to decide which of these photographs are the best photographs to use for a pet portrait. I ended up going with this this image right here, which was actually zooming in on this photo. I just zoomed in on the face because this was the one that was the most close-up view I felt of her face. And classically, a portrait is mostly the head, right? So I decided to go with that, but that's not to say that you can't, zoom out and do one of these other ones as well. But that's just where I ended up going for the final image for that painting next week. But I wanted y'all to be able to maybe do something a little different in the class that we have coming up next week and the following week, because I love it when people use a little bit more creativity. And but obviously you're fine to go ahead and follow along and do everything that I do as well. But you might want to go rogue a little bit, and maybe you want to do your painting next week of one of these other images instead of the one that I'll be doing. So there's always that option. And a couple of things that I did to these photographs, other than making them black and white, I did put a couple of filters on some of them. One thing I did here was I took this photograph in portrait mode so that it blurred out the background, and that could be really helpful. Let's see what else. Yeah, so these have some color filters on them. This one also used portrait mode, so the background is blurry and we're just focused on our subject. Got a hair that keeps getting stuck there. Okay, so those are some tips that you might do with your photographs, cropping them, zooming in, changing the light or the contrast in your editing functions, adding filters to them, which I think we're all pretty familiar with doing with social media like Instagram, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our sketching here. I'm going to go to a blank page in my sketchbook. Tear this one out so I have it handy. And a good rule of thumb, pun intended, for thumbnails is to do about 5 or 6 of them. So why do y'all think that it's good to do 5 or 6 thumbnail sketches? I'm gonna get some audience engagement on. Oh, Deb just told me I might want to change my password to unlock my phone because I just showed it to everybody that's on my kid's iPad. I'm not too worried about that, but thank you. Anyway, yeah, that's probably not the best idea to just do that on the YouTube video. I need to change the setting on my so it doesn't go to the lock so quickly, right? Anyway, I take it off and then I put it back on and then I forget to take it off. Anyway, I want to hear y'all's answers. Why, so I see somebody saying it makes you see which will work or not. It gives you different perspectives. Practice, you'll pick up the most noticeable features, all of the above to let you practice so you can pick up on stuff, to review the different contrast or color tone. These are all great answers. But I just want to read them all out loud because they're all really great. And exactly. To get what isn't immediately apparent, variety, you can find different ways to make them. Yeah, and details to see which one looks better, to get more details. Exactly. So my main reason that I tell students to do thumbnails is all of the things that y'all are saying, but also to make choices and to figure out your personal preferences, because you might get started on one of these, and if you were to just start without doing any preliminary sketching and without giving yourself a few options, you might get really frustrated. Some things that could frustrate you could be the background. You might decide, hey, I don't want to put this background in there. You might decide that you're having a challenge with something like the perspective. I can tell you the perspective on this one is very tricky. That's why I made it black and white, to try to make it as easy as possible to draw this particular image. Let me do my passcode off to the side here. This one has some really tricky perspective because Linda is all white. So the way the mass of her fur kind of creates this big, it's tricky perspective on this one. So you might get into this and realize, hey, this is really distracting and I don't like drawing the body in this way. But if you were to start on your final paper or on your final canvas, if you were, using a different medium than gouache, you might get really frustrated. So figuring out that, hey, I prefer not to do this particular view of the pet, or I don't want this background, or I don't want to have to draw or paint this texture. So it really comes down to your personal preference. And yeah, choosing the composition, like someone just added. Okay, so yeah, it's going to give you a lot of different options. So let's go ahead and sketch a few boxes here. And I think 5 or 6 is a good number because it really just gives you a lot of variety. And only giving yourself 2 or 3 options might not really give you that same number of variety. And it really gets you nice and warmed up. So most of these are, let's see, portrait mode. We've got 2 that are more horizontal in landscape mode. So turn my playing card horizontal for 2 of them, and then the rest of them, we're going to do portrait. And like I said, you're welcome to do a different composition. I'm going to just, for the sake of saving my brain power, I'm going to draw these pretty much exactly like I did on the other example. Because this is my 3rd class I've taught today. I got to limit my decision making a little bit here. But if y'all are feeling a little more creative than that, please feel free to experiment with some different compositions and zooms here. And yeah, or you might be using your own photographs of your pet, which would be really fun to see how you're applying what we're doing in the class to your own photographs, if anyone was feeling that brave. Or a friend's pet. This is actually the 2nd time in these classes that we've done some pet portraits. We did a pet portrait in pen and ink, a while back. It might have even been over 2 years ago. It was a while ago in this series of classes, and it was a two-part class, and I drew my friend Carrie's Chihuahua Biscuit because I did not have Linda then. I have only I adopted this old lady cat. She's almost 13 years old. I adopted her almost 2 years ago. Anyway, so yeah, if you're interested in another class on pet portraits that I've taught from Michael's, you can search back in that playlist that Ilse shared with you in the chat. And there was one on pet portraits in pen and ink, a two-part class where we drew a Chihuahua zoomed in pen and ink. Okay, so we've got our 5 boxes here. And I'm just going to start with this first image in our document of Linda in the window. And one little tip that I'm going to use in a lot of these examples is filling in the background space using a diagonal hatching line, which is a device that I like to use quite a bit to fill in. And it's a good device to use in thumbnail sketches because we don't need all the details. So we want to really hone in on like, what is the focal point in this image? Where are we trying to draw the viewer's eye in this composition? So where do y'all think that, oh my gosh, I gotta do something about this passcode. Okay, where do you think that we want to draw the viewer's eye? Where might we want to emphasize? I'm gonna ask you this for all of the images. I like that some Aubrey said the cat, the face. Okay, yeah, maybe I feel like it's maybe her nose and like the moment where the light hits her face and the whiskers right here. If we were to do this, especially in gouache, gouache has amazing opaque qualities where we can really emphasize the white whiskers using the white gouache next week. So that could be really fun to have those white whiskers really showing up against the black background. That could be a focal point. I love this little moment where her paw is resting on the windowsill. That's an interesting moment. So yeah, we want to really draw the viewer's eye there. So let's say we're trying to draw the viewer's eye to these white whiskers, then we definitely need some really sharp contrast between the background and that little moment where it goes from dark to light on her face. Okay, so just getting you thinking about that. There's no necessarily wrong answer there, but it's just good to think about whenever you're creating a composition or creating a thumbnail, like what is the purpose of this thumbnail, right? We're trying to make choices. We're trying to make decisions about our preferences. You might want to be sketching these with an H pencil to start so that your lines are showing up or are easy enough to erase. But I'm going to use a darker pencil because I want my lines to show up on the zoom, because sometimes in these graphite classes, they don't show up as much as I'd like them to. Okay, so we want to go general to specific with our shapes. That means we want to start with the general shapes and then move on to more specific shapes. And I'm afraid that if I sketch kind of small, you won't see it. So I'm gonna actually skip to a bigger page and just start with these big shapes here. So rather than trying to draw a cat perfectly the first time, let's start with the basic shapes like a circle and then maybe a little triangular shape coming off of that for the head or for the mouth, the snout area. Okay, and then we want to look at the overall big shape that she is making sitting on the windowsill. So maybe like another big oval here. Coming off the side, and then we've got the tuft of fur sticking out right there, and then a rectangle for the paw. And we got a little 3/4 view going for the head, so we're only seeing partial view of one side of the face. And then this is the moment that I love, this cute little paw moment right here. And then we can see the hind leg a little bit. Okay, so those are the basic shapes that we want to start with. And I'm going to really break down the contours on one of these. So we're going to focus on some different things in these different thumbnails. And like in this one, we're going to look more at the negative space. And in this one, we're going to look more at the contours of the cat's body. But in these two, and a lot of these we're focusing on the value and the texture of the fur. But so I'm not going to break down the contours so much in this one, but I want to really look at that that moment that we're trying to emphasize there with the light. Okay, and then there's a little bit of perspective here as well, because we've got the windowsill is on a tilt. So really we just want to make sure that we line up the line in front on the windowsill on the same diagonal as the back of the windowsill, and that's really all you got to do. And then we have this curtain coming down that's cutting off partial view to the body. Okay, so I'm going to sketch that again, but nice and light with my H pencil, so it maybe might not show up on the zoom at first. And I will do that with these other ones as well. So, okay. So I'm just starting nice and light and noticing those big shapes. That diagonal line. And I will use my B pencil in just a moment to make everything darker so you can see it again. And then we're going to emphasize that moment that we talked about. And I say spending about 5, maybe 10 minutes on each of these thumbnails is a good way to go. And with this one, since she's kind of far away in the photograph, I mean, she's still pretty close. It's kind of hard to see all of the likeness that we might want to capture in her face. So I'm not as concerned about capturing the likeness in this thumbnail, because we can always pay more attention to that in our final piece next week. Here, I'm just more trying to capture that focal point, that area of interest. So don't be too hard on yourself with your thumbnails, like trying to make them perfect, because they're practice, right? All right, so now I've got my, what do I do with that? 4B, here it is, right here. Okay, so I'm using the side of my 4B pencil, and I'm just going to really look at the areas of dark on the cat's face. So we've got this the dark ears, the dark eyes, and the darkness of the coloring here. And I'm using the side of my pencil so that I can add some really nice soft value. And rather than trying to get all the details perfect, because this is just a study and a thumbnail, I'm really just focused on the dark and the light value. So within those general shapes, I'm just adding the areas of darkness and just trusting myself to be able to capture some kind of likeness here based on those dark value shapes. So I'm using the side of my pencil to get some soft value for that whole big patch of coloring. And then I can press down a little harder on my pencil to get the indication of where the eye is going within there. And then there's this little moment under the collar, and this little, or near the collar, under the chin, where the collar is peeking out right here. And I can kind of use that to see this little shape that, this is where I'm focused, is this little moment where I'm zooming in on the nose and noticing just that little bit of a line on the side of the nose where it's a little darker, and indicating that little bit of the nose. And then I'm looking at the silhouette of light of this tuft of fur where it meets the darkness, because that's how that light is going to come forward, is having it be nice and dark around that. We can't have the light without the dark. Okay. And then I'm noticing where her paw is in relationship to all of that, because I wanted that cute little moment where it is resting there. Okay, so that's what we're emphasizing, is those moments. So we're really just focused on that focal point. Okay. And let's see, we've got this one more little interesting moment of dark where the curtain is right there. So that could be interesting. One of my favorite things about making art is how manipulative it can be. You can really manipulate what you want a viewer to look at in your artwork by just knowing where you want their eye to go. And a lot of times people just don't think about that at all. And an easy way to figure that out for yourself is to put your reference photos really far away from you and stand back really far away from them and ask yourself, what about this reference photo is interesting to me? Like, what can you see from across the room? And, you know, maybe with this one, it might be those moments that we're trying to emphasize here. Okay, and then I'm just going to use the side of my pencil to start to, well, first I'm going to get it nice and soft around that area of light that we're trying to emphasize. Because again, we want to make that light come forward there. We want to make sure that we've got a lot of darkness right here. And this is, you know, there's a lot of pets out there that have very light fur. And then I'm just thinking back to when I had a black cat. I'm like, or when if you've got one that's got really dark fur, then you need to do the opposite, right? If you're trying to emphasize a very dark pet, then you probably want to get them against a background that's really light. Otherwise, they're just going to disappear if you've got them on a dark background. And this is why this is a good reference photo of Linda, because she's got a dark background, so we can see that white silhouette coming forward so much. And then, yeah, it's night out the window. Okay, so I'm keeping it real soft all around her, but then since we don't want to spend too much time on this. And then actually, before I do the rest of the background, let me make her ear stand out a little more against it. And then we're just going to do that diagonal hatching line to fill in the rest here. So just a one directional diagonal line. To fill in the rest of that background. And then keeping an eye on the clock, I feel like that was around 8 minutes or so since we started on this one. Trying to keep them all under 10 minutes. We've got some time at the end to share out as well. All right. And then, yeah, we can add maybe a little bit of value to the coloring that we missed on the fur, or maybe a little bit to these curtains. I think that's pretty good. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is the one that I ended up focusing on for the final painting that we'll be doing next week. And I have drawn this particular photo of her a couple of times with the books. And if anybody wants to tackle that, zooming in on the book, you're welcome to do that. But we've got plenty of perspective happening in linear perspective happening in some of these other thumbnails tonight. And like I said, this is the one where I felt like there's just the most detail on her face. One thing about this particular image that maybe you might notice as we're drawing here, I did fudge the perspective a little bit on the point of view of the face, because this is a little bit more of a 3/4 view, but in my drawings, I made it more straight on. So I just kind of turned her head a little bit where it's directly facing the viewer, whereas in the image, it is a little bit more of a 3/4 view, if anybody caught that. Another thing that I did where I made some edits that I'll talk about this next week, but there's a pretty heavy shadow across this whole side of the face. And I decided to take that shadow out because I just felt like it would be easier to teach and follow along with in the class if I didn't have all that variation in the light on the face and just focused more on the value and the coloring of her fur. So that is another option, you know, just like I'm saying, what we can do with thumbnails is we can make decisions, we can make edits, we can make choices based on our personal preferences, or maybe what makes it easier for you, because rarely are you going to have a situation where you show someone a work of art and they ask to see the reference photo that you used when you painted it or drew it and say, that doesn't look exactly like your photograph. That really does not happen. And I've never had that happen to me. So yeah, there's always room for making edits. Okay, well, no, we're going to be zooming in on this one. I don't think I need to do a separate sketch like I did for that one. And a piece of paper underneath here, so the background's not distracting. Okay, so for this one, we're really just zooming in on the head here, and I did cut off part of her ear because I wanted to make sure that the face is filling up the thumbnail here. So I'm going to start with a little scoopy line here and noticing how it's kind of flat at the top of the head and then it swoops up like a horn here on either side. We got a very active chat tonight. It's hard not to get distracted by it. Okay, and then from there, I am just going to, I don't want to zoom in too much. I'm going to make sure that I get the bottom of the chin in there as well. So I'm going to start with a little line for the chin. And this is the one where we do want to try to notice some likeness, some ways to capture likeness. So we're noticing proportions, coloring, all of those things are things that really, you know, think about like if you lost your pet, what would you put on the flyer, some identifying things about them that you might say, you know, about their particular coloring or you know, unique things about them. So for Linda, she's kind of got this little like a flame of white that goes up her nose, and it's not perfectly centered. It's a little bit off to the left. So as we're drawing this like mask, she's kind of got like a Batman mask that she's wearing, but the little white part that looks like a you know, flame is sort of off to the left. So it doesn't go straight down the middle up her nose towards the top of her head. It's off to the left a little bit there. So, and then up here we've got a little bit of white fur. So I'm just going to start to sketch in that shape. And then I'm going to go ahead and sketch the Batman mask that I'm envisioning. And the bottom of the what feels like a Batman mask to me is right in line with the part of her chin that starts to narrow. So right where her cheeks start to narrow is where we want the bottom of that mask shape. And then the white flamey part is going a little bit skewed to the left. And then we've got a little bit of white showing over here. And then there's even a little bit of brown that kind of comes down the side of her nose. So it's not a perfectly symmetrical Batman mask. So just noticing those shapes in coloring if your pet has any distinguishing characteristics like that. And then there's another patch of more lighter fur here above this eye. So again, we're going very general here. So we're starting with the general shapes. We're not going straight to the nose and the lips and those details. We're going to start with things that can be easily erased and adjusted so that we don't get super attached to those details. And that is something that beginners often do, is they jump straight for those details rather than going very general at first. And that's where frustration happens, because then you get attached to your drawing and you don't want to make adjustments because you've already put those details on there. Okay, so now that we've got the coloring, now we can see if the proportions on the face match Linda's face or your particular pet's face, because we're trying to capture likeness in a pet portrait, right? So this is where I can notice that I have made the bottom of her face really round, and maybe it's not that round because her chin really narrows here. So this is why we don't want to get too attached in this early phase. So I'm going to actually draw kind of like some little oval shapes here and use those to measure the distance between the coloring that we just sketched with this mask shape and where the bottom of the chin is, because that's important to making it look like her. So we've got a little upside down frowny shape that we can use. And then under that frowny shape, it comes to a nice little point. And this might look a little weird, but then I can use that to connect up here and then erase some of those shapes that we don't need. And I should have a shape for the chin that matches hers, that looks a little bit more like hers. So I'm just using the relationship and the distance of those shapes to see if things look right. And then I can also use the distance between like this moment where the brown comes down a little further. And I would put my reference photo up on the screen right now, but if I do, it messes with the light on the Zoom and it makes it hard to see my drawing. So, but you should have the reference photo to be able to zoom in on the things that I'm describing. So I'm looking at the distance between this and where the little frowny moment happens. And then I can start to sketch in the shape of the nose. And just doing that, I'm already starting to see Linda's little sleepy mean mug. She's making a mean face. She looks mad. She's not mad though. She's a very sweet cat. All right. I'm just looking at that value on the side of the nose. I might be going over 10 minutes for this one, but this is the zoomed in one, so that's okay. All right, so I got that, and then there's that little, maybe I did make a little too much space between that. Maybe I need to scoot this up a little bit. Or maybe, you know what it is? That's not just a line, it's more of a shape. It's more of a double-sided shape. So once I put that in there, that'll make it a little higher up by the nose. And then we do have a little bit of whisker value. So I'm just radiating out some hatching lines right there. Okay, we don't need to get too detailed on this one. I'm getting really sucked in to the details. So I'm just going to use the side of my pencil to get some of that value that I'm seeing on the nose. And then use the darkest pencil that you have. And just get some nice soft value and fill in all of this. So we're going to do kind of a medium dark value because we want to save the absolute dark for the eyes, the little slits for her eyes. And then up at the edge of the top of the ears is where it gets the darkest. So just noticing how it's a little bit lighter. And this Batman mask in some places, and then where it gets darker. But again, we don't need a whole lot of detail on our thumbnails. We just want the general idea, and we want to start to notice those proportions and unique characteristics that are going to help us capture likeness. Because yeah, if you make like a dog's nose too long or too wide or too short, you're going to lose the likeness of that particular dog. It's not going to look like that particular dog. Or same thing with the coloring, noticing those details in the coloring. Okay, and I'm just gonna get some vague value down here. And then just have those diagonal slits for the eyes. They're going up in the opposite directions. I'm looking at this other thumbnail and thinking I spent way more than 10 minutes on that. It's got a little bit more detail than we're doing here, but I think that's good enough. We're definitely capturing Linda's likeness, but I definitely spent a little more time on that one. Okay, let's move on to this third one. This is the tricky one, I think, with this perspective. I'm gonna grab just a sheet of copy paper for myself real quick because I am smearing my graphite everywhere. If any left-handers in the right-handers might do it too, but especially being left-handed, it's really easy to smear. So having just an extra sheet of paper underneath you can keep that from happening too much. Okay, so we're gonna edit out the guitar in the background here. We're not gonna put that guitar in. And this is a bar stool and a table leg. We're just going to ignore all of that, but we're going to use this cushion that she's laying on as our anchor in this sketch to help us find the rest of the shape that we're looking for the body. Okay, so we're going to start with, and I'm not going to zoom in on this one either. Well, might have to do that with some of these other ones, but I think with this one, so noticing where the vertical line is on this cushion in relationship to the edge of the photograph. So it's about 1/3 of the way over here. And I'm just going to hold my pencil here in line with that vertical line. So we're going to start with that vertical line as an anchor. And then notice how, even though it's dark, this is where the bottom of the cushion is, where it goes up right here. We've got some 2-point perspective here, but we're not going to worry too much about that. If you missed our last class from 2 weeks ago, we did some similar perspective sketching where we don't need to worry about perfection to still capture something that has linear perspective. So we're just going to start with that vertical line. And then we're going to have a diagonal line right here. We're mostly just concerned about the placement of these lines in relationship to the edge of the photo. So try to get another a diagonal line to come up right here, and you want it in line with the one on the bottom. Okay, so, and if it looks a little off, then this is just information for you in your thumbnail exploration that maybe this is not an image that you would want to explore further. So if you struggle with the perspective of this cushion, then that tells you this is not the one that you want to develop into a final drawing. Okay, I think I should have scooted the whole thing over a little more. I'm gonna draw it again. Oh my gosh. See, this is why I don't advise that you use a B pencil to start. You should use an H pencil so it's easier to erase. But I just went for it, and then I realized I really went too far over. Okay, yeah, because it kind of goes off the frame right there. It goes off the frame on almost all the sides. And then we want to keep it kind of light right here because her chin's hanging over the side. So actually, let's start with that little that little triangle for the chin. So it's going to look like a box with a little finger hold there for the chin. Okay, and then we've got this foot hanging over. So we're going to draw this in using the negative space quite a bit here as well. I know we're going to focus on the negative space in another one of these, but you know what? This foot's going to have to go out of the frame. Her foot is fully in view in the photograph, but the main thing we want to get here is this shape. So her entire body is foreshortened, meaning there's information there that we know is there, but we can't see it. It's like this whole blobby shape is, so it's like foreshortening is, you know, we've got this whole long finger, right? But if I point my finger directly at the camera, all you can see is this shape at the top of my finger, and you can see a little bit right here of a shape. But you know all of this is there, but all you can see is limited. Okay, so we know her entire body is there, but all we can see is this shape. And then we've got the ears sticking out. So we're just going to draw what we can see. And we're not going to worry about all the parts that we can't see. So I think it's easier to just kind of create a little connect the dots for yourself. So we got the chin hanging over. We're using the cushion. We're noticing where is the paw in relationship to this part of the cushion? Where is the ear in relationship to the cushion? And you can also look at this negative space shape that is created in the background. I'm going to just go ahead and do my diagonal hatching line all the way across that background, because even this other ear only sticks up slightly. Okay, wait, something's off. Like this ear should be in line with that ear. But it is weird how one of her ears looks slightly disconnected from her head in this photograph. Is it just me? Are y'all seeing that? Okay, so yeah, this ear really only sticks up a little bit past that white blob of the body. I just thought you'll say it's comment, but it disappeared. This looks fine. Oh, never mind. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah, we're really using this connect the dots method here, and then just trusting that when we connect it all together, it's going to look right. And it might not. We might need to adjust it. And it might be that you need to move the cushion a little bit so you don't have to draw everything over again. Maybe we move the cushion up to meet the chin instead of the other way around. Yeah, that's a tricky one, y'all. Okay. And then since it's just a thumbnail, we don't need to make it perfect. Now let's go ahead and just use the coloring to achieve some likeness here. I'm scooting that chin up a little bit more. Maybe there's an illusion like the chin is hanging over that cushion more than it actually is. You know, that is really what's happening. Because see, again, we've got the dark to tell us where the light is. So there's the little hemmed edge of the cushion. It's like right in line with her. her mouth, the part in her mouth. So you can even just draw a line right there. Yep, that looks good. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the one with the dark window. Use the value of the cushion to make her come forward. And we can maybe use some hatching lines that follow the side of the cushion. And vertical lines, and vertical hatching lines. And then we can use some diagonal hatching lines. I'm definitely making some edits compared to my other drawings here to try to keep these around 10 minutes. Okay, and then we're just looking at that coloring again. The little Batman mask. Just a little bit of the nose. We don't need all the details here. You can really see that lighter patch in this photo to that part of the coloring, that part of the mask. I just realized her eyes are only open in one of these reference photos that I included. All right, I think that's enough for that one. You can tell which one is my least favorite of these thumbnails. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And in these last two, these are the ones that I want to really hone in on two things. So the contours of, so that's the elevational shift, excuse me, these elevational lines, and I'll draw them a little darker so they show up more here. So really getting the volume and the 3 dimensions. And I might draw this bigger on a separate piece of paper for us. And then in this one, we're going to look at the negative space. Much like with this one, using the negative space to find that body shape, because it's another tricky one. Okay. It's a little bigger for us. Okay, so in this image, we've got her loafing on this pair of jeans, and her tail is curled around here. So we've got this very round shape. And then this could also be helpful for zooming in on the face, noticing the contours of the face. Again, starting very general, and then we'll get more specific here. We're going to start with a big oval shape for the head. Oval shape for the head, and then a big oval shape for the body. And we'll get more specific as we go along here. And then we've got another big swoopy, almost rectangular, but oval shape for the tail. And then we've got the jeans that are making like a little rounded. Because she's elevated. So she's elevated by the jeans, and then her tail is hiding the other part of the jeans that she's sitting on. Okay, so maybe I'm not going to draw this in the thumbnail again. I might just draw it right here because I really want to make sure I can emphasize these contours. But you don't have to draw these on your, if you want to do these on a separate piece of paper, you're fine, or if you don't mind doing this in your thumbnail. But I want to look at the elevational shifts. I talk about this a lot in a lot of my classes, and sort of two things that I emphasize the most in all of these Michael's classes, or in every class that I teach, are contour lines and value shapes. Okay, so, you know, we've got this rounded head, right? But then there's the nose that comes forward from that. So let's go ahead and put in the little chin shapes that we've already noticed, and that little oval shape. Find that shape for the mask, but then we're going to put the contours on top of it. Okay, so there's a curved roundedness happening here that radiates out in opposite directions. And if this is the first time you're ever taken a class with me through the Michael's website, there is in that playlist that Ilse shared with you a class on understanding contour lines and 3D forms using a piece of fruit, using a lime. And so that could be a helpful one to start with. But I'm noticing how there's a horizontal and a vertical axis to the three-dimensional form of her cheeks right here. So they're very rounded, and just noticing the three-dimensional volume to the face. And overall, we've got this big oval shape that's rounded. So just noticing how the coloring itself has this volume to it. It's three-dimensional and it's rounded. So noticing that shape. And then or that three-dimensional form. And then we've got the nose. And that is, you know, kind of creating like a little cone shape right here that maybe radiates out like that. Right, and then on the chin, that also radiates out like that. So just noticing the volume of these three dimensions. So then when we put our coloring on the cat's particular coloring, we're doing that in a way that follows these contours. So as we're adding the value for the little Batman mask, we want to try to make them curve around the three-dimensional volume of the head, and that's going to really help us to achieve something that feels three-dimensional. And mainly I include this in this part of the class so it can be helpful for next week's class as we're adding our value with the paint, with gouache. We want to make sure that we're noticing how it curves around the three dimensions of the head and it doesn't feel flat, or whenever we're adding our little hatching lines for these texture on the fur, you know, that way I can refer back to this moment in this class and I don't have to spend time in the painting class teaching about the contours of the fur. I can just mention it, and then folks can go back and check out this part of the class to see what I'm referring to. Okay, so now let's look at the 3 dimensions of the whole body. So again, we've got this big rounded shape. Think about how nice and round all of this is. And then noticing how the directional flow of this fur. And I know it looks really weird to draw like this, but I think it's very helpful to notice these things. And then at this point, we want to start to curve it out in this direction. So we want to make it like a nice big bulbous shape here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. These contour lines, we just want to indicate that the roundness of it. And then same thing with the tail. I take a lot of yoga classes, and I always think about this, how a yoga instructor might say to send your breath into your legs or into your hips. And I have a friend who has told me, what does that even mean? You can't send your breath into your hips. And it's like, well, it's just an awareness, right, of your breath. So that's what I'm really trying to get you to do by noticing these contours, is to send your breath, send your awareness when you're adding your value or your texture or your hatching lines. You're noticing that like it needs to follow these curves, right? So that it feels three-dimensional and it doesn't feel flat. So it's just worth taking a moment in one of your thumbnails to zoom in and do that moment there. So I'm not going to draw it again since I just did it that way. And that took about 10 minutes. So one of my thumbnails is blank. I wanted to make sure I did it nice and big so that nobody missed that. Okay, so now let's look at this last one with the one where we're gonna focus on the negative space. And oh my goodness, an alarm is going off on my iPad. I don't know why. Okay, so yeah, made this one black and white because there's a lot going on the image. This is so meta because we're drawing we're drawing the cat on this is actually my old drafting table, so it's not the exact same table because I have a new desk, new to me since this old drafting table, but same spot where I'm currently drawing. Okay, so we've got a lot going on in the background, right? We've got the stack of books. We got a little wooden mannequin back there. We got some stuff on the walls. We got this cup full of paintbrushes and pens. We got a bag of art supplies. And then we've got Linda. So we want to create a bit of a silhouette of these things. Oh my goodness. Why is that even happening? Most of the time, this iPad is used by my children, except for when I'm teaching these classes. I don't know why my son must have set an alarm to go off at 7:10 p.m. Okay, so we're going to create a bit of a silhouette of what's going on in the background. And again, if you struggle with the perspective on this stack of books, I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. We're going to think of it like a little stack of stairs. And then we're going to not draw the entire cup. We're going to just draw the idea of the cup and then a little bit of the silhouette of what's inside the cup. And then we're going to notice, just like with the one in the window, these little moments that we're trying to emphasize. So again, it's like, there's something about this photo and the way you can just see the tiniest bit of her nose and her her face coloring that just, it's very cartoonish to me. I feel like it was just worth including as one of these pet studies. So it feels like a little, it feels like it has a narrative or a story, or like it could be a scene in a comic strip there. So I decided to include that one. Okay, so let's start with that. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna sharpen my pencil real quick and I broke it. We're going to start with that negative space. So I'm just going to get a different pencil. So let's start with the stack of books, and I'm cropping here again. I'm just going to do a little stack of vertical lines that indicate that stack of books, just getting further and further out. And then I'm going to have a horizon line for the back of the desk where it meets the wall. And I'm just going to leave a little gap for that cup of art supplies. Okay, so that's what I'm starting with. And then I'm noticing how the cup comes up just slightly away from that line where the desk meets the wall. It's kind of hard to see on the Zoom, but if you're looking at the reference photo, you should be able to see how the cup, the top of the cup just comes slightly up from that line. So we'll draw a little curved line coming up right there. So there's the indication of the cup. And then the standout thing in that cup is the paintbrush that looks like a makeup brush. So I'm gonna sketch that shape. And then I'm just gonna have a few random little skinny rectangles coming up out of there for some of the other pens and things sticking out of that cup. So just the vaguest notion of what's in that cup. Okay, and then we're going to notice how Linda's ear is sticking up right here next to the cup. So we're using the negative space and the relationship of her head to the cup. And she may go off out of the field a little bit here in this one more than in the other one. Yeah, I'm going to be, but I really just want to focus on that one little part of her face anyway. So let's just get the little ear sticking up right there. And let's not worry about the rest of her head yet. Okay, and then notice how her body creates a diagonal line coming up this direction. Okay, and then the rest of the body creates a diagonal line going this way. So we're just doing like a little comic strip cat here. So we really just want to get that profile view of the side of the face. And then a little curved line for the side of the head. I might have to do this a couple of times to get it right. And then I'm just going to use the side of my pencil, see if I can get that nose to be in the right place. And then I'm just going to go for it with the Batman mask coloring. And let me just see if I can nail it on the first try. And I advise that you do the same, because why not? It's a thumbnail. We don't need it to be perfect. And if we don't get it right the first time, we can do another thumbnail. You might surprise yourself, because we're just noticing, what is it about this photo that we would notice if we held it up across the room, right? And it might be that little cute little dot for the edge of the nose, and then the idea of the coloring. And yeah, I think I did it. There's a thing my daughter does that I think is an exceptional skill as an artist. She just goes for it. I like to think she gets that from me. She believes she can do something creative and she just tries it and she usually succeeds. She makes all kinds of stuff that she sees. She makes little sculptures out of clay. She just sees stuff and is like, I can do that. Anyway, so yeah, I'm noticing just that little moment of value. And that's it. That's all we're doing. We're just doing a little cartoon kitty for this one. And then using the negative space to find the idea of the cat there. And I feel like if I were to do a portrait of Linda where I really wanted to capture her personality, this would be it because I was getting ready to do some art. I set up my desk to work on some art and then here she comes and then she just camps out right there and gets so comfortable in a matter of 3 seconds and is like, oh, excuse me, did you need to be here for something? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking a nap right here. That's her personality. So when you're doing a pet portrait, sometimes you want to capture the pet's personality, and that is it. Okay, and then for the rest of this, we can use our diagonal hatching lines again for this thumbnail. So yeah, we're just figuring out what we might want to edit out of our photos, how we might want to handle the background, what we might want to crop out, and where we want to emphasize, and then what is exciting about that particular composition. How do you feel about doing a full painting of any one of those? Ask yourself for all of these, which one are you the most excited to paint? And it might not be this one. Maybe it's the one in the window, or maybe if you were working from your own photographs, it might be a different one. Okay, wow, we've got a solid 10 minutes left, but I'd love to see y'all's sketches, and then maybe we can answer some questions with the extra time. So if you want to hold up your thumbnail studies, you'll see I can spotlight you. Oh, Barbara, look at that. Wow, oh, those all turned out so good. Can you hold it up a little higher so I can see the one at the bottom? Oh, yes. Yeah, you did a great job on that last one too, just getting that little personality of the nose and the coloring, and those contours look great. Wonderful. Okay, and this is Autumn. Oh, yay, Autumn, you did your puppy. Oh, look at those. Yes, oh, I'm seeing some personality on that one on the bottom left for sure, hanging over the edge of the cushion. Oh, and you've really focused on some good value and details in those moments too. Oh, I'm so proud. Great work. All right, Liliana, you got some sketches? Yes, look at that. Oh yeah, those contours look great. Oh, can you flip it over? It's upside down. Oh yeah, look how you handled that one, that tricky one. Great job. Yeah, the perspective on that is really nice. Oh, I'm so impressed. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, zoomed in nice and big on those thumbnails. That looks great. Yes. Oh my gosh, y'all, I'm so impressed. Wow, you really captured her sleepy face on that one hanging over the cushion. Oh, that's really impressive. I love it. And you captured her in the zoomed in. Yeah, you really got the gesture of the weight of her chin on that cushion. That was really nice. Oh, yes, you made her look so regal in the window. Oh my goodness. I love it, Deb. Yeah. Beautiful work. All of those are so great. Oh, I love how you did the last one kind of off the side. Oh, I hope y'all share these with me. Feel free to email them to me, or my email is just, you can find it through my website or through my link tree. Wow, Raquel, yes. Oh, those all turned out so good. Oh, and I see, yeah, you did your pet as well. You got a dog in there in some of those. Yes, those are great. Oh my goodness, I'm just blown away. Y'all did some amazing work. Some of these have so much detail for just a little bit of time that we spent on them. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that is adorable. I love it. Is that Linda? Is that my cat? That is her. Yes. Oh my goodness. You did such a great job. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So good. All right. Thank y'all for sharing so much. Let's see, we've got a few more minutes. Are there any questions that I could answer? Thinking about the classes coming up. Jennifer, wow, get her an agent. I love it. Oh, Autumn, your dog is named Prince. So cute. Yeah, are there any questions that I could answer maybe about the class tonight or the upcoming classes next week? So next week it'll be two-part class on the gouache pet portrait, and I'll just be doing the same image of Linda. I'm explaining to my cat that I shouldn't draw him so he doesn't get angry. Aw. But we're gonna sketch it out. We'll sketch it out first on our watercolor paper and start out with really thin gouache. We'll be treating it like watercolor in the early stages and then building up to thicker and thicker paint. So it's gonna take us 2 sessions. So it'll be part 1 and part 2. And yes, we'll be taking our time. So gouache is opaque watercolor. It is it's like it's very thick. It has a very thick, opaque quality to it. And it's got a really interesting texture. And you can find that jelly gouache that I'll be using at Michael's. The Artist Loft jelly gouache. That's what I'll be using on the supply list for the next couple of weeks. Yeah, go you ache. That's how I like to remember how to spell it. Go you ache. And then it's pronounced gouache. Yeah, thank you all so much. What an amazing class. I really enjoyed it. And y'all's pet studies just blew me away. And I know my daughter especially, she is so in love. My son also loves our cat, but my daughter is obsessed with the cat. So she would love to see all of y'all's drawings. I'm gonna make sure I show her this video on YouTube so she can see all of your sketches, and I can't wait to see your paintings as well. So hopefully you'll join me for those next couple of classes. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and end early with a few minutes left. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again. Good night. And thank you, Ilse.